Welcome back to Graceful Embroidery and to the second part of this series on stitching out the updated Romantic Crazy Quilt number 6. It's important that It's important that you've watched the first video in this series on stitching out Romantic Crazy Quilt number 6. In the first video we attached all these 5 pieces of fabric, and as you can see we're going to finish it off. We're going to do the applique and do the embroidery. I'm going to check my software here and see exactly where I am. I've stitched the outline. I haven't stitched the outline of the applique, but as you can see here, you can see how the join is underneath the applique, and this curved bit here takes it up there. So that's how that fits together. I'm just going to scroll out so that I can see the whole design on my Epic 2 screen. The last stitch I did here was the outline of the applique, and before that the motif stitches were completed here in this darker gold, which coordinates with this gold here, and then we had the motif lines of stitches covering these 2 seams, that one there, and down here I went for a bright purple. I'm not quite sure whether I did the right thing for that. These are the essential tools for doing this embroidery. A nice pair of sharp scissors. I tend to keep them here underneath my machine rather than putting them on the right hand side of it. A long time ago I picked up a pair of scissors and they caught the screen of my machine and scratched it. So I just stick them here until I've made my machine embroidery tidy that will hang down here and keep the scissors well away from the screen. That's what I do. This is my Soline fabric glue pen. Bright blue, but as I explained in the previous video, it does dry to white. More important that you don't have any lumps of glue under your fabric. Those won't disappear. And a stitch ripper in case everything goes wrong. And that also should be in my machine embroidery tidy, which has not been done yet. Now, you'll probably find when you look at the software, look at the design in your software or on your screen, I have included lots of outlines, and they're probably not all necessary. I'm just going to trim off a little bit of fluff there. You probably don't need the outline because this border of lacy border has given you the outline. So I'm going to take the machine forward and I'm going to stick some glue on here because I don't need the outline. That bit there is actually hanging over the side of the embroidery unit, so I'm supporting it with my fingers and putting plenty of glue on. This fabric glue, this quilt block, eventually some of the elements in it became the Almond Silk Paisley collection. I think that's enough. Take that back so that I can apply it in place and push down on the base of the embroidery machine. And I'm going to iron it space with my fingers. I hope you can see that. Now we have an outline. I'm not going to stitch that. And the next, I have two outlines in fact. One's for cutting. All right, I'm going to do this outline here. Before the satin stitches, oops, there's an outline of zigzag stitches which we'll stitch out next, and they're quite useful in that that's it, stick. I've taken the hoop off, it's so much easier, and then as I go round the curves, I'm able to get the angle right. Now I was looking at my original stitch outs. Oh dear, that's not good. Holding the fabric up works much better, as you can see there. And when I originally stitched this out, I actually did one of these paisley appliques, and I put the fabric on, and I also put some tulle over the top. And one of the purposes of doing this, or one of the benefits of doing this, is you can leave the tulle to overhang, and it will cover up any little errors. You can't put tulle on itself, obviously, otherwise you'll see the two different pieces of fabric. I must say that using silk dupion, it's not the easiest fabric to use for appliques because it tends to fray when it's cut on the curve. You can see it fraying now. I'm just going to swivel this round and lift this section up and trim that a little bit more. Sometimes when I'm doing appliques, I like to trim them after they've been stitched. But for a bright fabric like this, that's not a good idea, and nor is it for this particular design. One of the things you could do, if you're not too happy with having to be fiddly here, now we're fraying everywhere, is not to do this outline that we stitched previously, and then you could have a rough edge cut around and not be too worried about the edges. Let's put that back on the embroidery hoop, and we're going to do the zigzag. And before I do the zigzag, I'm going to take the thread off, and I'm going to go looking up here. I'm going to choose this colour here, which almost matches with the fabric. Now the satin stitches are going to go over the top of this, but when you've done the zigzag and your stitches have been, you've got lots of little threads sticking up, and now's a good opportunity to trim some of those away. This is not the easiest fabric block to do, and if you chose a fabric that's not going to fray quite as much, that will make it easier for you. But there's no reason why you can't let the frayings be a feature. Sometimes it's helpful to put your finger underneath here and just make the design just a little bit more proud. I mean, obviously you don't want to push too much because you don't want to attach, you don't want to mess up the, there we are, we're getting in a lot closer. I hope the camera's picking this up. Just a little push with the fingers, and this end of the is your greatest challenge down here. You will get a lot of fluff from when you're working and cutting with silk. Now look how much easier that is. So on reflection, if you're not happy about doing this, then I suggest you do a trial run before you actually do the hoop, to hoop out the actual block. And then give it a good blow. You can decide when you want to trim. It may have been easier if I trimmed after the zigzag stitches, because obviously they're a little bit more supportive. You've got to mind these motif stitches as you go around the top here. Don't want to catch those in your scissors. You'll see me using these scissors an awful lot, and in fact I made a mistake when I was in the first part of this stitching the block out. I said they were Japanese. They are in fact, oh dear, the manufacturer escapes my, begins with G. You can use a little bit of tape, sticky tape, or just a damp finger to pick up some of these, or brush them away afterwards. Right, I think that's enough. Oh dear, getting. Where's the edge? Oh dear me. Right. Now, I had a senior moment there. I couldn't remember how to thread my machine. You could go for the gold edging, or you could do it in this purple. I think I'll do it in the purple. No, I won't. I'll be brave and I'll do it in the gold. I've just looked down at my top. It's covered with purple fluff. But it's silk fluff, so it's not so bad. And as you can see today, I am wearing my t-shirt, which has got the a design from the Chawton Gardens collection. Let's do this satin outline. going to stop it there because this satin border, I'm just going to cut the thread. It has done the underlay, and the underlay comprises of 2 edge stitches and some zigzag. So now really is the final time for doing any trimming that you want to do. And as you see, I'm fluffing it up with the scissors. You may not think that this is important. We all have different standards and what we want to achieve with our embroidery. Not too bad. I would say if you try to trim your fabric and then come back and trim it closer, it's harder. You need to get in as tight as you can the first time, if that makes sense. And as you can see, as I'm trimming here, you can see the 2 colours which make up this silk dupion. A lot of silk dupion has 2 different colours, the waft and the weft. This is black and purple, so the black threads are sticking up there. I think that would do. I've just broken the rule and I've put my sharp scissors on the right hand side of the machine. Right. Got a thread caught there, just doesn't look very nice. I have just had a thought, probably dangerous. Choosing the purple dupion was deliberate on my part because I wanted to challenge myself. If I'd gone for a gold or a pale colour, it wouldn't have been so difficult to get rid of the stitches. However, every time I stitch out my designs, I see ways of improving them, and I have to tell myself at some point or other to stop and accept how they are. But it just occurred to me, if you're confident enough, you can take your machine when you get to this motive outline. Don't stitch that. Move this machine on to the applique and do the applique and do the little zigzags and then do this lacy surround and then put the satin stitches on top, and you will find that there is less fraying showing. So that is an alternative way for you to stitch out the applique paisley. There are a few tufts sticking out. I'm not going to take this off the hoop and fiddle with them now. I do have down here another applique. It's a smaller one. I'm not going to do an applique for time's sake. So I'm going to move beyond that line and its fastening line and its zigzag line, and it does have a motif fill in the middle. Now I'm going to stitch this quilt block out with a minimum amount of threads. That means that sometimes like I normally do, I'm going to change the threads as I'm going along, and I'm going to do the motif fill in this gold again because I think it looks really nice. I think the purple's wonderful, it's very regal, and we will use the purple thread, and I'm glad I did that in the gold because that's when it suddenly occurred to me about this alternative way to stitch it out. And if any of you do that, I'd love you to show me the results. Let's do the little motif fill which goes over this smaller paisley shape down here. Did you notice that the motif stitches are themselves paisley? I digitised this quite a few years ago, so it's almost like stitching out a new design for me. I'm going to check. Now I've got leaves and little swirls and small flowers. 17 minutes worth of embroidery, and to do that I've chosen Salty Rayon 0630, which is one of my favourite darker greens. It's called moss green, although I have noticed that the colours of threads can vary. I've seen them called different things on websites compared to what it says in your software, but I call it moss green. Just before I stitch this out, you don't have to do this motif fill, just like you don't have to do the applique down here. You can cut out elements on this quilt block and make it simpler, and if there are gaps, that gives you more room to decorate it with crystals and pearls and such like. So I'm going to stitch out the 17 minutes worth of the green, and when that's done we'll come back and we'll have a look at it. The Crazy Quilt block is now finished, and I've taken it out of the hoop and we can see it here. And overall I am really pleased with the bright regal look that we're getting here. I hope you like it too. Just a couple of criticisms. The applique isn't perfect, but if you stitch it out the way that we discussed earlier on in the tutorial, I think you'll be pleased. There is a gap here, plenty of gaps for you to put pearls and crystals, and or if you have some silk ribbons, make some little bows, buttons, sequins. In fact, the list is endless of the things that you can add to these quilt blocks. So I hope that you've enjoyed the tutorial and that you found it helpful. There'll be plenty more machine embroidery tutorials coming at Graceful Embroidery. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already, and leave a comment and a like. I'd love to hear from you, and if you stitch out this block, then do send me photos. If you bought this block in the past, then the files have been updated and you can download those from your account at Graceful Embroidery. And as a special for this updated design, it is available for the next 2 weeks. That's until the 3rd of December 2021. It's available for $10. And there is a smaller design as well that comes with this, which is for the 5x5 hoop. There's not so much detail, obviously. Thank you for watching, and until next time, happy embroidering.